Sure. Hey everyone, this is Mariah Davis. I'm the field manager with the Choose Clean Water Coalition. We are really excited to be giving you all this webinar today to rally your reps around the Forest Conservation Act. This webinar is in preparation for a rally that will be taking place next Tuesday. So thank you all for joining and participating. And for those of you who may know someone who isn't able to participate today, we'll be sure to share the link with you all, so you're able to rewatch this as many times as you need to. But yeah, without further ado, Ben, I will kick it over to you to give us an overview of what we'll be talking about today.
All right, thanks so much, Mariah. So, hi everybody, I'm Ben Alexander. I'm the water policy advocate with the Maryland League of Conservation Voters and acting as the state lead for the Choose Clean Water Coalition for Maryland. And we're really, really excited for the Forest Conservation Act, something really positive that we hope with your help that we can get passed to really help the forests here in Maryland stop losing so many forests, etc. So we have some great speakers and some great stuff lined up for you guys all today. I'm really quickly, the agenda of what we're going to be talking about is first we're going to start with my esteemed colleague Kristen Harbison, who's our political director, and going to help go through just some how-tos on lobbying and how, like, what you should and shouldn't do, and give you, some background information to make you feel a little bit more comfortable. We're going to go through then the logistics of the day, thanks to Anna Mudd with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and then Sheila from Baltimore Tree Trust is going to give you some different tips and tricks, etc. And then I'll kick back over to me and us to go over a little bit more of the ins and outs of the bill and talking points, etc. So I'm going to kick it over without further ado to Kristen, who has kind of our theme for the first part as well.
So yes, so what happens sometimes when it's late at night and I'm putting together a presentation, you come up with something like "May the Forest Be With You," a Star Wars themed tour of how to be a lobbyist. So I am the political director for Maryland League of Conservation Voters, which means I'm the chief lobbyist for the bills that we're supporting. But before that, I was a legislative I was a staff for Chairman Maggie McIntosh, first Environmental Matters Committee, and then in Appropriations for 5 years. And so that was a lot of what I learned about Annapolis and how things work came from my role as staff. So from a professional lobbyist and a former legislative aide, as a professional lobbyist, I'm the Han Solo of the world, a hired gun to some degree, although I work only for Maryland League of Conservation Voters. So bear with me if you don't love Star Wars, I apologize for that, but the information is still good anyway.
Doesn't love Star Wars.
Well, who doesn't love Star Wars? So just as to start around, the first thing I think people, and I don't know who everybody is and whether they've done this before, but really just as a basic understanding, the first thing I always like to remind people is that when you're going to talk to your legislators, you're going to talk to people. And politicians always get a bad rap. You're never going to not win points in a joke by making fun of politicians, lobbyists. But in fact, the politicians don't see themselves, the legislators see themselves as public servants. They are public servants, and they see themselves as champions. And they started out, almost everybody that you're going to meet started out as a citizen activist. Who then got involved, who decided that they wanted to be on the inside of the decision making and they wanted to go forward. So they're seeing themselves as the heroes of, they see themselves as the heroes of the story. They are the champions carrying forward the theme of carrying forward the legislation of what we're asking them to do. They're representing their communities, but it's also important to remember that they started out as citizen advocates, and they still see themselves, most of them still see themselves in that way. They are in Annapolis for 90 days, and then they go back to their regular lives. During the 90 days that they're here, They are sacrificing a great deal. They're not seeing their families for most of that time. They're not seeing their children. They're not they're having to take time off from their day job. It's not a full-time legislature, which means that they can't, you can't support a family on what you make as a legislature. So they all have other jobs, or most of them have other jobs. So they really are it's really a citizen legislature. And they really see themselves as the heroes. And they all have legislative aides. So and the legislative aides are your guides. They are the people who are your intermediaries between you and between the legislators. So they can be your best friends in terms of helping you understand what's happening, when it's happening. They can answer your questions. They're good people to follow up with after your legislation. And then you're the citizen lobbyist. So, and if it makes you feel comfortable, you can call yourself an advocate rather than a lobbyist. I am very happy to be a lobbyist, but not everybody. But I fight with my dad about this all the time. But you are the citizen lobbyist. And in my Star Wars world, the politicians see themselves as Luke. The legislative aides are the Obi-Wan Kenobis, and you are Princess Leia. You are both the leader of the rebellion, and you're also an ambassador, and you're both of those things. So in order to think about when you're doing your visitor, it's the last point in all of my slides is be a good human. Really everything that I am going to say is basically just reminding you to be a decent person. Always tell the truth, even if you think other people don't. If you think other people who are representing the other side are not telling the truth, it doesn't matter what they do. You just need to know that you are giving the information the best you can. If you don't know an answer, that's actually great, because if you say, I don't know, I will get back to you on that, that's a really great thing, because then you can have the opportunity to follow up with the legislator and say, hey, you had this question, I have the information for you later, which means that you have another opportunity to talk with them again, which is great. And it also builds your relationship with them, because working in the legislature is about relationships. And it puts you in a position of being somebody that they will trust. So so if they have questions later about the issue, they'll reach out to you. They want to know, especially if you're working with people who are in your district, they want to know what you think. It's also because, going back to the point of everybody's complicated. Everybody has lots of different stories. Never assume that you know what their positions are, because you don't know who else, what other things in their lives may be important to them or may be influencing them. When we were passing a bill to ban a certain pollinator-killing pesticide, we had people who I never would have expected to come on board saying, oh, hey, but my brother's a beekeeper. And so they really cared about it. So you never know all of the people in their lives or everybody who's going to be informing them. So never assume. Always make the case. Always be prepared to be very brief. You may only, especially if you're meeting with the legislator himself or herself, you may only have a few minutes. So be prepared to just be in and out in like 5 or 10 minutes. Always be polite and respectful. Don't ever just remember that you're there to build a relationship with them. You're asking them for something. You want to build that relationship. You want to be somebody who they trust, who they like, and keep the tone positive. These are just, again, this falls into the line of being a good human and having a good conversation with anybody that you're going to be asking for your help. And be an ambassador, but also remember that you may be an ambassador, but no, I'm not done yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're skipping ahead for me. So you're like Princess Leia. You may lead the rebellion, but you also are an ambassador. You may be an ambassador, but you also lead the rebellion. So keep focused on what you want. We want this bill to pass. So remember the talking points and stick to it. You're helping them make decisions. And the most important thing is that you have information no one else does. Those of us who are down in Annapolis all the time with the policy and the details of the legislation and all the background and the facts and the whatever, you don't need to know all of that. That's not the information that you have that they need. They need that information, but the reason the constituent visits are so important is because what you know that they don't is your story and why it's important to you. So, you know, they will go back to the stories that they hear from their constituents about why things meant something to their constituents. So your stories are really important. Why do forests mean something to you? Why is it important to you that this bill has? That is the reason why you have why constituent visits are so important and why lobby days are so valuable, because those are the stories that give weight and make the facts and the details and all the really wonky stuff on the inside makes sense. Because
you will now be placed into conference. The conference is being recorded.
So be sure to make the ask. So tell your stories. Everybody should be telling their stories, but then be sure you make the ask at the end of, will you support this bill? Will you vote for this legislation? And the ask is really important. And it's really important that in constituent visits that you ask that question. Will you support this bill? Will you vote for this bill? And the reason it's important is that one of the things that I have found to be absolutely true is that a promise isn't a promise until it's a promise to a constituent. There are only 4 legislators in the state that I can vote for. I can vote for 1 senator, I can vote for 3 delegates, but I'm talking to all 188 of them. So 184 of them really, they care what I have to say, but they don't really care what I have to say because I can't vote for them. You can. So if they make a promise to me, it's not as important as making a promise to people who can vote for them and who they are actually responsible to. So always, always make that ask before leaving, and of course, be a good human. Remember that everybody has their own agenda. I mean, the legislators in Annapolis, I find almost all of them are really great people. I actively enjoy most of the people that I meet down here. I think that they are well-meaning, they are doing their best, they try hard, they believe what they're talking about, they believe in what they're doing. And even when they disagree with me, they're good people and they're trying their best. They are not policy experts. They're policy experts on something. They're not policy experts on everything, and they rely on conversations like these lobby days, and they rely on both citizen lobbyists and the professional lobbyists to give them the information that they need to make the decision. But beyond that, although you want to go in assuming positive intent and assuming that they're good people and assuming that they care about what you're saying and that your meeting is important, because it is, everybody has their own agenda, and there are a lot of other things going on. So it's important to keep that in. Don't make the opposition's argument for them. If you're like, oh, I know that people are saying this about the Forest Conservation Act, and so I want to yell about this. You make your case. You make the case for what we want to do. We want to save the forest, and this is why. Let the opposition make their own case. You don't have to do it for them. Stick to the relevant information. Again, you may only have a few minutes, so be direct to it. And listen to what the legislator or the aide, if you're meeting with the aide, listen to what they're saying, listen to what they're not saying, and try to remember as much as possible about, did they give other information in there that can be helpful for the follow-ups? For those of us who are going to be going in and cleaning and going in afterwards and following up and picking up those pieces, the information that you get from the legislators can be really valuable for us to put together the story of everything else that's happening. Did they mention other people who are visiting them? other stories they've heard, questions that they have. These are really important. If you ask them a question and they don't answer it, that's important too, because that helps us to know. Again, we're trying to figure out the story of what everything is happening, and what they don't say can be as important as what they do. But again, don't go in there thinking that they are there to be sneaky, or that they are, they've got they're duplicitous and they're, all like, in for themselves, because they're not. Always assume good intent. I think that's really important, because like 8 years in Annapolis, and I think almost everybody that I've talked to in the legislature genuinely has good intent. They just don't always agree with me, but that's okay. Our job, our job is to make the point. So every meeting has a protocol. Just very briefly, introduce yourself, give the name, tell them where you live in your district. They want to know. Most of them really want to know it. It makes them feel like they understand who you are and where you're coming from to some degree, as do other community groups involved in. Again, you are representing home for them, and so they want to know that connection. This is a way for you to make that connection with them, for them to know where you're going. Tell them why the importance is to you. Again, that's what you have that nobody else has, is why it cares to you. And then thank them. I mean, always thank them for meeting with you. They've taken their time. You've also taken your time, and that's important too. But always thank them, because that's part of being a good human. And it allows for follow-up. They need you to make the decisions that you want them to make. They can't be the leader you want them to be unless you help them get there. And then some of the most valuable advice I ever heard about the work of being a lobbyist or a citizen advocate, and however, is that your job is not to change their mind. Your job is to give them information and allow them to change their own mind. So that is what I have to say, except for may the forest be with you.
All right, thank you. Thanks so much, Kristen. And we're going to have time for questions at the end and such. And we're going to, if you didn't catch all of that, we're going to re-up a few of the most important points of that as we go on through the presentation. But first, I'm going to toss it over to Anna Mudd to talk about the day of logistics and what we're all going to be doing there.
Thanks, Ben. Hey, everyone. This is Anna Mudd with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. Just wanted to go over the day of logistics so you guys know what to expect when you arrive in Annapolis. We're going to be getting there as soon as doors open for the Maryland House building. That is the House of Delegates building on 6 Bladen Street. And we're hoping that team leaders can arrive shortly thereafter at 8 a.m. At 8:15 a.m., the doors to the event will be opening and volunteers will start to arrive. We'll have breakfast set up and a registration table set up as well, where volunteers can grab their t-shirts, get their name tags, and check in. So from 8:15 to 8:30, that's just really a chance for people to mix and mingle. Obviously, the timeline is kind of tight here, but we're working with the time we were given, which is from 8 to 1. So from 8:15 to 8:30, team leaders are going to be greeting volunteers. People are going to be grabbing breakfast, grabbing coffee. But at 8:13, the program begins. That's where we'll be welcoming everyone to the room, making sure everybody's in the right place. We'll be hearing from our bill sponsors. Senator Young and Delegate Healy are both confirmed to attend. Now, given that it's the legislative session, things can pop up, but as of right now, it is on their calendar, and they are hoping to come and address the crowd and thank all of you for your support and for your hard work in getting this bill across the finish line. And then finally, in regards to the program, we'll be hearing a quick update from Elaine Lutz, who is the staff attorney and pretty much the head lobbyist at CBF, regarding where the Forest Conservation Act bill is in the General Assembly, who our key targets are, and just hopefully having a few minutes just to answer any questions, last-minute questions folks have. At 8:45, we're going to be breaking out into our district teams. Some teams will be really, really small, and some teams will be really big because we have a lot of folks coming from the Anne Arundel County area in particular. So we're going to be breaking up, giving folks a chance to meet each other, and handing out instructions and assignments. Your team leaders will know what to do But if you have any questions, again, this is a really great opportunity to talk to your team leader and get everybody get on the same page. So that's from 8:45 to 9:15. Starting at 9:15, that is when we divide and conquer. We'll be walking the halls of Annapolis, both in the House building and the Senate building, meeting our legislators, meeting legislative staff, and just creating a buzz and visibility about the Forest Conservation Act bill in the halls of Annapolis. Everybody hopefully will be having matching T-shirts and stickers, and we even have someone dressed up as the Lorax who will be coming for photo ops and such like that. So we're really excited about that. Quickly, at 10 a.m., we're going to ask a few folks to go out to the State House and try to catch legislators as they're walking into session, again, just to create visibility and buzz about the issue. At 12 p.m., after folks have met with their legislators, met with legislative staff, passed out handouts to legislators around the State House, we're going to be convening on the State House steps for a big photo. And the purpose of this is two things. We want to get a group photo of everyone, but we also want to catch legislators hopefully as they're walking out of their session. If you've ever been to Annapolis on a weekday, you'll see them all kind of leave the State House at the same time, and it's a really great opportunity for us to create some visibility and some buzz about the issue. So at around 12:30, we'll continue meetings if they're on the calendar, but we'll also be cleaning up the room, and we'll be out of there by 1 p.m. because there is an event that is taking place in that room at 1 p.m., so we've got to be out of there by 1. And we're also hoping, folks, if you're planning on sticking around for the Senate hearing, you'll also be able to join us in that room at 1 p.m. So navigating your way around Annapolis, I know a lot of folks on the phone have been in Annapolis before, but I thought this would just be a really great refresher. We're going to be meeting in the House building, which is highlighted here. The House building is a really easy facility to get through, and we're going to be in room 142, which is on that same level as security. The room will be room 142, which is also known as the Anne Arundel County Delegation Room. It is not like a reception room traditionally that you've probably been to, but it's more of it's actually a hearing room where the Anne Arundel County delegates meet on occasion. So that is going to be in the House building, but meetings will also be taking place with senators at the Senate building across the street, which also requires security. And then at noon, we're going to be meeting on the steps of the State House for a picture. And if you're looking for our group, just look for the Lorax. That's what I've been telling folks, so just keep that in mind. Let's see. Moving on to 13. So parking, there's tons of parking options in Annapolis. I would encourage everyone to get there on time because parking lots do fill up. There's a great visitor center lot on Calvert Street, lots on South Street, and the Noah Gilman Garage on Gorman Street. There's also Gott's Parking Garage, which I don't think is highlighted here, but Gott's Parking Garage is also very close to where we'll be convening. Gott's is G-O-T-T-S, and you can Google that and find it very quickly. Parking's pretty affordable, and hopefully you'll be able to find a spot and get to where we need to be by 8:15. There's also going to be an Audubon Natural Society bus that's going to be picking folks up in Chevy Chase and taking them there. I talked to Eliza, who's coordinating that. She says as of right now, they're almost filled. But if you do live in Chevy Chase, let me know, and you need transportation, let me know, and we'll try our best to get you to Annapolis. And then finally, there is a carpooling option available. Ben, I don't know if you want to go into a little bit more detail about this, but it's a really cool website where you can sign up to carpool.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, we just set this up as a service to folks and we're sending it out as you RSVP, sending that out, the link to folks as well. But basically, it lets you sign up. If you're a driver and you have spots in your car, you can sign up and say, like, hey, this is where I'm leaving from, this is when I'm leaving, and this is how many people I can have. If you can't drive and you need that, you can go in and click on one of these little green outline people there for somebody like I'm leaving from Crofton, for example. Sheila is from Baltimore, and there's a few others and such. You can reserve a spot there, and then just for like going and coming. And then if there's nothing yet for you, you can, over on the right, there's this little thing called the waiting list. You can go there and just put it there. You say, hey, I need a ride from wherever, and then once that opens up, then you can get a ride then. So we can be more eco-friendly and also help more people get to Annapolis. And you can share gas money and all that stuff too, which is all good stuff there. So if there's any questions or if anybody has trouble finding that, let me know, but that's for your convenience. I'm going to kick it over to Sheila.
Great. Hi, everyone. So like we've been reiterating in the previous slides, the best way to prepare for Rally Your Reps Day. So, of course, a lot of this is going to be, on your feet conversation, talking with your representatives about why you care about this piece of legislation. But some tips that you can prepare with that should make it a little bit easier on you is using this presentation. So you can use this as kind of like your cheat sheet or something to study on the way, especially if you're carpooling or on the bus next Tuesday morning, and give yourself some time to familiarize yourself with the issues. So this doesn't mean that you need to know the ins and outs of the FCA, but more so kind of the bulleted points that we'll continue to go through in the rest of this presentation. Enough that you can speak to it, but also show why you care about it is really what's important here. RSVPing is incredibly important. We definitely need a great showing here, and the more people we can get from a wide range of districts in Maryland, the better. So be sure to RSVP. That will help us also know how many people to be expecting, so we can also relay that information to our representatives. And then this is probably my favorite one, is creating a personal story. So, we all have experienced or not forests in our area, and I think if you're able to speak to what that means to you or what forested land means to you from an array of different perspectives, those are the stories that really grab people and show the more human side behind the legislation itself. So if anything, beyond familiarizing yourself with some of the pointers here, is definitely understand what it means to you and why you feel moved to share that with a representative. You need a photo ID to get through security, and they'll print you a little sticker. And then we encourage casual but neat attire, so anything that you could wear out in public or to work is encouraged, and we will be giving out Protect Our Forest t-shirts as well at check-in. And you will be doing a lot of walking around. Last time I went to one of these events, I made the mistake of wearing flats with no socks, and I was freezing and very uncomfortable by the end of the day. So I definitely suggest comfortable footwear. And then when you get in and check in, we will have volunteers there helping you get signed up, giving you name tag and a t-shirt, and then directing you to the next step.
Great. So just a little bit more about thinking about your personal story, and you probably want to practice this a little bit before going in, but just to give a couple of examples to think about of some sort of anecdote from your past or why it's important to you, and it can really span the gamut, and it's good so that not every person in the group is repeating the same thing that the person said behind them. If you don't have a personal story, then you can stick to the talking points and to the facts and everything like that. But this really is a way to really personalize it. Like the top picture there is the nearest forest to where I lived. My wife and I, right after we got engaged, just really enjoying it, and you can tell it about how important that part was to our relationship and everything, and how important it is kind of to our family versus. Another one is when we were out in Frederick and there was a lot of forests and trees coming down. There was a lot of people that talked and gave their personal story about how much they loved their park or their forest in the nearby neighborhood, and how hard that was to see when that was all destroyed all at once, completely legally, because the whole Forest Conservation Act just isn't working. Or about some, after the forest came down, some flooding or some problem that they saw downstream, or we also heard stories of families where the kids had asthma because there's not enough forest that can filter enough of the air and water, or etc., or flooding issues. So just thinking about how this is connected with you, or some people it's a little bit different of just how they've seen that places out in forests are getting all the development and investment, but their local communities doesn't have trees, doesn't have forests, and how they really want that to change. Whatever that is, whatever way you can make a personal touch, take some time to think about it and practice it, but keep it very short because there'll be these long meetings and we're only going to have 10 minutes with each one. So boil it down to whatever you think is most potent, if you will, to tell these folks.
Okay.
And then just a few last tips for Sheila. You want to take these?
Yes. All right, so this is basic, again, like we were saying way earlier in this presentation, just being a good, decent human to the people that you're meeting with, but of course, starting the meeting with a thank you. These are very busy people who are, again, this isn't their full-time job, so, thanking them for their time and for meeting with you and the other groups of constituents. Being polite and positive, so if, this is the first or only impression that they're getting of those in support of the Forest Conservation Act, make it a good one and be positive and show why you care so much about this piece of legislation. Keep it local. So often, we want to focus on the state of Maryland, not necessarily other jurisdictions unless those are positive examples, but keep it focused on where we are now and why Maryland can be a great national example of strong forest conservation legislation. Don't forget to make an ask for that support. That's a really important piece of information to carry back, especially as we want to learn which representatives are in support or not, or on the fence. We can know who to follow up with, either with thank yous or with maybe some stronger nudging in a different direction. Feedback is always important to solicit. So anything that, let's say, one of your representatives might wish you had said or wanted you to say or wanted to know, that's also really helpful for us to learn as we go, so we can come with the right information when we walk into the room. Following up is also really important, and we're going to help out with that as well. But again, thank yous are a great way to show more of a long-term sense of support for your representatives, and we'll help initiate some of those thank you notes as well. And this one's very important too. Don't make anything up. If you don't know, you don't need to say it. You're there to speak to the top of your intelligence and why you care and what you do know and what you can speak to. And anything else you can always say, I'd love to follow up with you later. I don't know that, and that's perfectly okay to say. Alrighty. Oops, getting ahead of time. Okay, and so further tips and best practices. You will have a meeting lead there to guide you. So when in doubt, look to that guide and they will help lead the way. And again, starting with introductions and thank yous, your representatives will definitely want to know, who you are, where you're coming from, how far you've traveled, and all that said, definitely be sure to be prompt and keep it timely. Get to the point of why you're in there and what you want to say and how you want to say it. And definitely feel free to share the energy around the room. Let's say if you've been talking at the last few meetings, give someone else a chance to maybe make the introduction or say the thank you or give an important argument. And if you're feeling very, very generous with your time, definitely ask for a group photo with a staffer or legislator, especially when they are in support. That's also really great for us to have. To show and help build momentum and energy around supporting the FCA.
Okay, so that's a lot of, so hopefully by now you get a general idea of how to conduct yourself, but now it's like, okay, what are we actually talking about here? What is going on with the FCA, as we say, or the Forest Conservation Act? Basically, it's a law that came out in 1991, has a lot of loopholes in it. As much as we're trying to stop the forest loss in this state, they're going fast. Since it's come out, we've actually lost 100,000 acres of forests in Maryland. And as the builders are really profiting from that, the Marylanders really pay the price. Most of that loss was from, or a good portion of it was from development. And we found that actually the highest priority or best forests are a lot of times least protected, our biggest areas of contiguous forests. And as we lose them, we lose all the benefits that go along with them. We're losing kind of the lungs of the earth, if you will. And we really need to improve the Forest Conservation Act to stop that problem, to really protect the forests that give us the most benefits, if you will. So what does this bill really actually do? It does these kind of 5 things. The first one, it's really big, is defining priority forests. We know that not all forests or trees are created equal, if you will, and some of them are particularly important, for example, for cleaning up all the water that's going downstream for drinking water and for really ecologically important areas. Are, you know, old growth forests and capturing a lot of carbon that are doing a whole lot for us, protecting wildlife, protecting the kind of stability of our whole environment and ecosystem. So it really, and then we also are better clarifying what justifies clearing these priority forests, because there is a definition in the old act, but it's easily swept aside that they can justify, well, you know, it'd be hard for us to go elsewhere, so we're going to plow down these forests, even if it's a bunch of very old and important forests. So we're having them really have to justify why they would have to clear these areas so that we can prioritize conservation and preservation over just restoration, because if you plow down this old forest with you know 100-year-old trees and you put in these little whips on the little tubes that are, you know, like, and they are pretty thin around, and then come the drought that summer, if they're not maintained, they will die off, and it takes a long time to get to actually back to a place where you have a real forest, if you will. So on these places where there's priority forests, we're making sure, and they do give justification, they still have to replant as a 1-to-1 ratio. Right now it's there's a lot of loopholes, and even when they do, there's a 4-to-1 ratio. So right now it's like for every 4 acres you chop down, you only have to replant 1 acre, and we're trying to preserve more, and then saying for every acre you chop down, you replant 1 acre. Now this is really talking about the larger areas of forest. We're not talking on a house there, oh, grandma moved in and we want to make a little addition, so we have to, you know, chop down a few trees. Do I have to worry about this? No, it's, you know, if you're talking about, you know, if you're starting to clear like 20,000 or 400,000 or 40,000 square feet, so like an acre of forest, then you start having to worry about this stuff. And not for doing like logging where you take some out and replant or whatnot, but like, you know, permanently getting rid of a forest, if you will. Then we're also making sure that we can clarify that forest protection, to make sure that it comes down earlier in the planning process. So if a development comes in, if they're like, we're gonna want to put up a whole bunch of row homes, put it in a big parking lot, they should think about forests early in the process, because right now it's like tacked on at the very end. They're like, oh yeah, and I guess there's a whole bunch of forest there. Maybe we should think about that, but we're so late in the process, let's try to get out of it, right? So thinking about that early in the process so they can do their best to make sure that they build and develop in an environmentally sensitive way and not just mass grade the entire area, which is what we're really seeing of, you know, they take out those high-tech lasers to say, we will make the ground exactly this level the whole way across, and anything that gets in our way will be chopped and graded at exactly that area. It's not what we want. I want more of a environmentally friendly way of doing things, so making sure that happens. Then also, we're going to really try to make sure that more partnerships are used, and the fee in lieu money is used a bit better and can be used in grants and in better partnerships with state, local governments, and nonprofits. So what happens is basically, if they can't replant and they can't say, then they have to put money into like a fee in lieu. It's already happening, but right now that fee in lieu is basically sitting in these accounts around the state. it's adding up, millions of dollars it's adding up to. And eventually it actually kicks back to the state. In a lot of counties, it's actually not even ending up going to actually do replanting and doing reforesting like it's supposed to. So we're going to fix that. So we're taking that old act that was a good first try to do some forest conservation, and we're doing some really important fixes so that we can save our best forests, because there's been a lot of studies coming in that our best forests are the ones that are actually taken out the most. So we're really excited that you guys can help us do this. Of course, the lobbyists for some of the big developers don't like this, and they're going to be putting their high-moneyed folk, high-powered moneyed lobbyists to fight against this. So what we really need is the people, you guys, the citizens, to say why this is actually really important. So that really comes down to you making that ask. So please support, this is important, the bill numbers. Bill number SB stands for Senate Bill 610, and HB stands for House Bill 766 to update and improve the Forest Conservation Act. And you can say why that's really important for benefits for drinking water, wildlife, overall quality of life, etc. Now, that's if you're not sure if they're supporting it yet. If they're a co-sponsor and your meeting lead will have information telling them if they're a co-sponsor. If they're a co-sponsor, yeah, they're already, they're sponsoring the bill, so they're already pretty much for it. So then it comes really more to a thank you for co-sponsoring. And then the ask is, what can we do to help make sure that this thing passes? And thank you for being such a big champion. And that's just a little difference, just so that it's not, you don't want to go into there and be like, would you please? And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm the sponsor of this bill, of course. That it's still really important for them to hear that, so that they know that people are really behind them, and because they're sticking their neck out when a lot of these developers are putting a lot of money into a lot of people's campaigns. So for them to stick their neck out and do something that the people want rather than just the money in politics want, that's really important. So other information that you can sprinkle in for forests is that they're really the life support systems of Maryland, and actually 1 acre of forest provides enough oxygen for 8 people to, actually that should be 18 people, that's a typo, 18 people to breathe for a year, and gets rid of 6 tons of carbon dioxide. It also has done studies about it preventing billions of dollars worth of pollution reduction. Basically, there is, basically it's that they can reduce so much pollution coming from runoff, etc., from different parts. And I'm sorry, Anna, I guess I got carried away for that. I'd forgotten that you had some of those. Did you want to take it from there?
Actually, can I jump in for just a second?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like, if you are visiting with somebody who's already a sponsor of the bill, thanking them is important, but the ask then, you're not asking them to support it because they do support it, you're thanking them for support it, but you still have an ask. And that ask is to, they want to be able to vote on this bill. The committee has to vote on the bill in order for most of the members of the General Assembly to be able to vote on the bill. So if you want them to feel strongly enough about the importance of this bill that they ask the committee chairman and the leadership of their chamber to say they want to vote on this bill. So even if you're meeting with a sponsor, that ask is incredibly important.
Okay, thank you. Anna, did you want to say anything else? Jump in there.
Nope, I think you covered it. Thanks, Ben.
Okay. Yeah, and so, but just back to the last part of that is billions of dollars worth of pollution prevention. They're basically big sponges these forests, and they've done studies showing that if you take down these forests, you're going to have to put in a lot of fire retention and rain gardens and sediment ponds and all this kind of stuff. It'll cost actually Maryland billions of dollars to do the same thing that the forests do naturally for free. And since we have a commitment that we're going to save our local streams as well as the Chesapeake Bay, Maryland's going to have to pay for that one way or another. And it'd be a whole bunch better if we could protect these things rather than plow them down and then have to pay for the fixes. So I went through most of these pieces right here. This is just, and we can send you guys a fact sheet on some of that, on some other talking points, etc., that you guys could talk about while you're at the meetings and whatnot. But I want to finish up so that we can have some time for questions. So I'm just going to hop through that. And one thing I do want to point out for anyone that is a meeting lead, the meeting lead is basically the person that's going to be showing up there early, arrive there at 8 a.m. that morning, and it's going to basically make sure that the group stays together, knows which place that they're going to, when, huddles up and says, okay, who wants to talk about what, so we're not just all repeating ourselves. You know, who wants to take what at what meeting, coordinate that, etc. And this kind of the one that cohesively keeps on time. Also make sure that you get to a meeting on time and don't have the meeting run over. If you have another meeting coming up, you know, start politely saying, oh, we have another, you know, and be very clear at the very beginning, oh, we have this next meeting coming up at then, so we have to leave at that point, and then, you know, wrapping up at that time. The night before, at 7 p.m., on the 19th, there's going to be a call just for the folks that are meeting leads to get them feeling more confident and ready, and we're going to do a Q&A and you know, just help them feel comfortable and confident to help lead those meetings, etc. The night before. If you want to be a meeting lead and you haven't said so yet, please let us know. There are still some available for some places. Though we're going to have one per, you know, one per districts or whatnot. So we might end up moving you to another district. Keep that in mind. So with that, I'm going to switch so that you guys can see all of our contact info. Unless there's any other notes that Sheila or Anna or Mariah you wanted to add, I'm going to open it up to the folks for questions. Hearing none? Okay, for the last 10 minutes, I'm going to let anybody, you can either put your phone off mute and ask a question, or you can type on the chat, and we'd be happy to answer any questions, comments, concerns, etc. that you may have.
How many meetings will each team be having?
The question is, how many meetings are we having? In total, we don't have the entire numbers yet because we are still waiting in on RSVPs. Oh, and by the way, if you have not, please do RSVP. You know, for example, CBF has the link that you guys should have gotten for RSVPing there. So once you RSVP, we will then make sure that there's a meeting for that office. But for those offices, but depending on, you know, if there's nobody coming from a particular district, we're not going to have a meeting there because they only really care to talk to their constituents, really. You know, I mean,
That's not totally true.
that's not totally true. But we've even had them even tell us, like, will there be constituents there? Because if not, I don't have time for a meeting. But if they do, then they're like, oh, people that can vote for me and actually care about the down ballot stuff? Yes, say more. So for each person, we're trying to get it so that for some of them, we're combining districts. So for each district, you have 1 senator and 3 delegates. So that's 4 meetings right there. We're going to try to get for those. But then sometimes we're going to have a group that'll be 2 districts. So that means you're going to go to up to 8 meetings in that morning. Probably less because we can't get them scheduled for all of them. But, you know, then half of them will be ones with your constituents and half of them not. So then, you know, we try to make it so that you make sure the constituents talk more in those meetings, and then, you know, maybe you would give more of the facts or the some of the other bullet sign talking points there or whatnot in that. So that depends. For those folks that have fewer meetings, since each meeting is only going to be about 10 minutes, in the in-between times, folks can come back to the home base of room 142 in the House building and can grab a bunch of leave-behinds to leave with other offices, in which case you don't really talk to them. You might get a minute to say something when you're dropping something off, and there will be all the other things going on. So I hope, does that answer your question? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah,
Are there any
thank you.
districts? Are there any
Hey,
districts
Ben, and
or
this is Anna here.
Go for it, Anna.
Yeah, this is Anna here. I just wanted to add that we have some really creative leave behinds. We'll be having fact sheets to hand out to every legislator, but they also be accompanied by a gift, a copy of the Lorax, which is a Dr. Seuss book, and those will have tags that say support House bill, Senate bill, as well as some really important facts about the bill itself. So we're hoping that can kind of is a fun way to keep legislators and staff engaged. So you're not going to be passing out just boring information sheets. We're actually hoping there will be a lot of fun and create a lot of buzz around Annapolis.
And we have CBF and Anima to thank for that. So thanks so much. And they're doing a lot of work to put all that together for us. So that should be fun.
Yeah,
Thanks.
and I think that kind of addresses Melanie's question. This kind of addresses Melanie's question where she asked, are there going to be any legislators who will not be available to meet? And if so, what are the follow-up plans for that district? We'll still be giving them leave behinds.
Yes. And also for that is some of the meetings will not be with the legislatures themselves, but with their staff.
Which are just as important.
They're the OB1s.
Always,
right?
yes. Never feel slighted if you don't feel slighted if you're meeting with staff. Staff actually often are more conversant on the legislation. Remember, they're your guides to get to legislators, so they are they're very important. You hear stories periodically of people getting really, constituents getting really indignant, saying, "Oh, I can't believe I wasn't able to talk to the legislator. I only got to talk to the staff." The staff knows people hearing that, and they can be really helpful to you, but they won't be if they feel like if you treat them badly, they will not be as helpful to you, and you want them to be your gatekeeper. So
they do all the work.
They do a ton of work, and they are the ones who brief their legislators about basically what they should do and how they when they should vote on things. So. Legislative staff are really important. So if you're meeting with them, that's awesome.
And yeah, and legislative staff do so much behind the scenes, can really be the difference between a legislature being somebody that might vote the right way versus also being like a real champion on something, because if you have a great staff that can do a whole lot, like on the federal level. I'm thinking May Stevens is like the best. Yeah. So yes, so that's a good one too. Where can we get a copy of this presentation? We will send out a copy of this recorded presentation, and I guess we could probably also send the slides with those too, right, Marat? And that's also because I've had a bunch of folks say that they couldn't come on, but they were very interested.
Yeah, we've been recording this, Ben, and we'll be sure to share the link with everyone.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. And then of course there are just a few folks that we can't meet them those days, but we are going to set, if you're coming, you'll be able to meet with at least some of your delegates that you are the constituent for, if all goes well. But make sure that but that's only going to happen if you RSVP, by the way. So please, you RSVP and other people RSVP, because if you just show up on the day and be like, why aren't I meeting my legislature? It's like, oh, you didn't tell us you were coming, so we didn't set up a meeting with that legislature because you didn't want to have a meeting with nobody in it. So RSVP online, please. Other questions? Should we know anything about whether or not, whether we know if their opponent in the next election is supporting this bill? That's a good, interesting question.
In most cases, in some cases, we'll know. They know who their opponents are. In all cases, they know who's running for them. I think that is harder. It's hard to know exactly where everybody who's running for the opponents are standing on it. But I do think that it's important that they want to care about, that we want this to be a bill that people want to run on, that they want to be able to go back to their constituents after the end of session, when they really hit the campaign trail and say, this is an important bill that we got passed, I voted for it, I was a champion on it. One of the things to remember is that in terms of elections, during the 90 days the legislature is in session, they can't raise money, and they are in Annapolis, not in their districts for the most part. And so they're not, if they have its tight race, and a lot of them do, they're losing ground as their opponents are able to raise money in districts, go to meetings, knock doors in districts. So they want to, their power of incumbency comes from them being effective in the legislature. So they want to be, we want this to be something that they run on, that they pride themselves in, that they champion and say, look at what I did for you when I was in Annapolis in the last 90 days when these losers were just like hanging out, doing their thing and raising money and like knocking on doors and talking to you when you couldn't see me and you were seeing them. This is what I was doing and here's why you should vote for me. So, yeah.
It's a great question. Oh, hey, Smokey. Glad you could hop on. Hope you can make it. Any other questions? You have one more minute. Going once. Going twice. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time to talk with us and everything. We really are looking forward to seeing all of you. It's so important that you guys can make it there to fight for the forests. And may the forests be with you. Everyone have a great time. Have a great night and see you next Tuesday.